I've been at Adobe 10 years and full circle reporting to the same guy eventually.
Wow, 10 years at one company. That's a stretch these days.
I did just my job and it was such a massive failure. Not a single person showed up. And you wouldn't have even thought this was possible.
There's a lot of different names for it. There's Barney meetings, the I love you, you love me. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Partnerships Unlocked, where we have fast, tactical conversations with the top partner leaders in the game today. I'm excited to actually welcome a pretty big guest today. Marie Knight from Adobe is here to tell us a little bit about how they do partnerships over there. So, Marie, welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Greg. Excited to be here.
Excited to have you here. And just for the folks that are listening in that are not aware how many different business units Adobe has and how many different partner teams and what that could actually mean, can you tell us a little bit more about specifically where you and your team sit within the business?
Yeah, absolutely. We were just debating this before we started, right? There's a lot of ways to describe partners at Adobe. So my team sits on the digital experience side of the world, which Adobe has, if you think about Adobe, you think probably the digital media side, like Photoshop, Acrobat. I tell my parents I work for the PDF company. I work on digital experience, which is more analytics, marketing tech-based applications. And then specifically, I work on content commerce and Gen AI. So those products that are fueling content experiences for the largest enterprises globally.
Wow. And have you always been a part of that group at Adobe, or have you been in other business units?
I started in data. I'm like a data dinosaur. So I started on the data side, but actually, ironically, the person I reported to then is now our SVP of product, and I'm in his org. So I've been at Adobe 10 years and I full circle reporting to the same guy eventually.
Wow. 10 years at one company. That's a stretch these days.
It is. It's a good company, and I've served both sides of the house. So Adobe, I've changed roles every three-ish years, but always on the partner side. And when I say partner also, I define that as technology partnerships, not revenue partnerships. That's a different team within Adobe outside of product.
Yeah, that makes sense for an org of that size. And what were you doing before Adobe?
I worked at a couple of startups, which is hard to remember that life. But I worked at it used to be called a PMD. It was like a social media agency, basically, but we had tech. It was called Adaptly. So we worked with like the Facebooks and Pinterest of the world. And before that, I worked at a data company, which is now part of TransUnion. So I was kind of lucky. I started at Targus Info in this department that was like a lead gen department. I was like, oh, I hate this. And they were like, well, let's explain to you what a cookie is. And maybe you want to do this ad tech thing. And ad tech morphed into MarTech and creative tech.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's all that stuff is changing so fast. It's going to change right now with all the AI stuff.
Yes.
So what is the focus? What is the purview, or not so much purview, but the goal of the team that you work on now? Like, what does success look like for the technology partner groups within the content arm?
Yeah. It's a good time to ask that question because it's the end of the year. So we're doing all of our annual incentive plans. For us, it starts with product. So do we help fill a gap for product? Do we help accelerate product? Or do we create new revenue opportunities for product? So it's not always a one-to-one tie to revenue, but we definitely influence revenue. That's the primary set of goals. And then secondary is growing the partner ecosystem. So you talked about, like, right now we're in this age of AI. Every startup not yours, has AI in the title. And so we're trying to figure out, like, who are the people we should be working with in the partner ecosystem? Who are the players we should be reaching out to and establishing relationships, and then speeding up really our product processes by using partners.
Got it. So it sounds like the traditional kind of main use cases of technologies, right? Which is to fill product gaps, drive more value for the customer, create a 1 + 1 = 3 or more kind of a story. But you guys are doing it on obviously a very large scale. Are you able to even share like some of the kinds of partnerships you guys have built? Obviously, don't have to share the ones that you're
Yeah.
working on.
Yeah. I mean, we work with some of the biggest companies in the world that, in Silicon Valley that you could think of, and we work with some of the smallest, genuinely. And so this year, the big focus for us has been on Gen AI partnerships. And most of the ones, we actually just had Adobe Max last week in your neck of the woods in LA. And that's our digital media conference. So we announced partnerships with TikTok, Innovid, Amazon Ads, LinkedIn. I'm forgetting somebody. Google. So they're kind of the bigger, an important one. They're kind of the bigger partnerships because I think of those partners like the steering wheel of a car. Like the car's not going to go anywhere if you don't have the steering wheel, but Adobe has to build the car. But we need that steering wheel to get us to our final destination. Otherwise, the product doesn't really have a place to land.
Got it. That makes sense. And I feel like that's a good segue actually into the first question that I like to ask my guests, which is, what is one strategy or play that you have used in your partnerships career or are currently using that just has worked really, really well? It, doesn't even necessarily have to be something that you can rinse and repeat, especially with technology partnerships. They're also different. But what kind of do you use that you're like, this is always a good plan because it's going to drive real results?
It's a good question. And for me, the results piece is sometimes very tangible and sometimes not. Yeah. So I always say to my team, we are evaluating things to completion. And the completion can be, it didn't work or it did work. So for me, it's always being crystal clear on what your mission or your purpose is. There was a partnership we did, this is probably like 5 years ago now, we launched a brand new product called the Content Authenticity Initiative. And that was really doing like image provenance for AI. This is before it was such a big thing, but AI rendered content. And we constantly just came back to like, what is the mission? And the mission was to create accountability in AI generated work. And so it kept us really focused. It kept us focused internally and externally. That mission's easy because it feels more altruistic than, sell more widgets. But if you're really crystal clear on what the purpose of what you're trying to do, it's very easy to drive that to a successful outcome. Again, whether that outcome is we've decided to walk away or we signed the contract and now we're doing a press release to tell the world about it.
Got it. I love that. And then on the flip side, what is something that you've tried that just blew up in your face? I think most of us have more of those than the other side.
Yeah.
If you're doing your job well, I think, partnerships should be experimentation in a lot of ways. And I think you mentioned earlier that you guys like to experiment at Adobe. So what's something you tried that should have, by all accounts, worked, but actually blew up? And like, what did you learn? Why do you think it worked? Or didn't work?
And this is I'm going to say this from Adobe, which is a big corporation versus a startup where you wear many hats. But at Adobe, part of the partnerships, especially right now, is you do the partnership paperwork, you sign everything, and then you have to promote it. You have to do the go-to-market piece. And I had this massive go-to-market fail. I got at a big event, it was like this big international event. I got one of the biggest companies in the world to sponsor this big party for Adobe. I got our executives there. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. Like, we have two of the biggest companies in the world. We just launched this big partnership together. Everyone's going to be here because they're doing this event. But I didn't check. I didn't check to see who they invited, who our team invited, what the guest list looked like, how long my exec was going to be speaking. I did just my job. And it was such a massive failure. Not a single person showed up. And you wouldn't have even thought this was possible because the event drives hundreds of thousands of people. So people just naturally would have trickled in. It was nobody. So it was a massive failure. And if anything, it actually, instead of saying, I never like when someone says that's not my job. And I kind of did that. I kind of was like, this is my job. I'm going to stick to my lane. I'm worried about people showing up, but I'm not going to take responsibility for it. And I think when you're a partner person, like, my job on paper is sign the contract, check, work with legal, work with product, work with marketing, and then walk away. But you can't really walk away because partnerships are more than just signing a contract on paper. It's this trust between these two companies. And we have a long enough relationship. We were able to repair that. But you can't take your eye off of all the different moving pieces in a partnership, because even a technology partnership is more than just a tech API integration. It's always more than that.
Yeah. And I, like I said, I always like this question even more than the kind of what went well, because there's always a lot of factors in why something goes well or why it doesn't. But I personally have learned so much more from the things that I screwed up than the things that I did well. Because you don't, most people don't do a post-mortem on a big success. They don't go, oh, why did this work? Right? They just assume like, oh, you know what? I'm just awesome.
It's because I'm amazing. Yeah, I did that, obviously.
Exactly. But like if you're a good operator, when something that you expected to go really well just blows up in your face, you start to dissect like all of the different aspects of it. And I love what you called out around, well, yeah, there's so many pieces that go into making a technology partnership successful. It's not like, do the platforms connect, right? If you're talking about integration. And yet it is very easy, either intentionally or even unintentionally, to do the whole, it's not my job thing, because there's just so many hats that you're wearing in partnerships, and there's so many pieces. And like, it's actually very great to hear. I think people are going to be excited to hear that this is still a challenge at a company like Adobe, because I think a lot of partner leaders are assuming, hey, I'm at a startup, I'm at a smaller company, we just don't have all the resources of bigger companies like Adobe or Salesforce or whoever. They've probably got it all figured out. They've got all of the right people in all of the right places, and they've got the great, operating procedures and all that. But it's nice to hear that this can happen to anyone, and it never hurts to have your eye on as many of the kind of angles as possible.
Yeah. And that's like, the other company is so much bigger than Adobe that I was like, I kind of rested on that. I was like, this will just work. Like, how could it not? It was, I got lazy, and I can give you a ton of excuses as why I was lazy. We were talking about our toddlers before this call, right? Like, I'm tired, but the excuse doesn't matter when you're standing there and nobody walks in to the event. It doesn't, like, everyone just looks at you because you're the partner person, and whether you are responsible for it or not in that moment, we always use the term, fall on the sword. I don't think there was a bigger fall I could have taken. So yeah, you have to wear, even at a company like Adobe, you can't just put on that one hat. Like, you have to be responsible for the business as a whole. Yeah.
That's a great lesson. And I realized I was so excited to hear about your failures that I didn't even double click into the success story. What did you learn from that success story? And why do you think it worked out really well, other than obviously having a good end goal associated with it?
Yeah. I think it was a really ambitious project, because 5 years ago, no one was worried about, AI being manipulated the way people are now, of like, oh, is this real or not? The sensor, the human check is better. It worked really well because we found these, we launched, I didn't mention the partners actually, so good to circle back. We launched with the New York Times, actually, which is not a typical tech partner, and at the time, Twitter. And it really, the partners that we launched with were kind of validated. They're news-based, they're, timeliness and, authorities in their space, in terms of, if you wanted to know a timeline at that moment, you would go to Twitter and be like, what are people talking about? If you want to, you can argue best news source, but New York Times is certainly one of the top in the country. And so we had the right partners to validate and say, hey, this is new, but this is important, especially with news-related events. And we launched in November 2020, so we were right in the election season of that year. So the newsworthiness of the event was really important. But then, as a tech person, as we talked about, I'm in startups and data. I'm like calling the Times. I'm like, hi, my name's Marie. Do you have like an AI person I could talk to? We had support from my executive team. That's where the Adobe muscle for sure helped make some connections. But, the Times didn't at that time have this massive division. It was one guy, and we happened to get the guy.
Yeah. That's funny. I would have been surprised if they had more than one guy. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like the timing matters, right?
Yes.
It's not just about, does this sound cool? It's like, is the market ready for it? Does the market need it? Are your partners ready for it? So that's a solid lesson.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, then we usually like to close it out with maybe 2 or 3 other lessons that you learned or unlocks that you learned in your career and partnerships that you just honestly wish you had learned earlier, because it would have either saved you some heartache or just driven bigger success for you.
Yeah. I knew I knew we were talking, and I was actually just talking to a partner where I was like, look, dude, this just isn't going to work. And he's like, great. No is as good as a yes. And I'm like, isn't that so true that like a no is just as good as a yes? Because, all right, it's not going to work. I'll call you in 6 months. Let me spend my time where I need to. And then I think also kind of tangential to that, when I started my career in partnerships when I was like much younger, I was working with someone who was like, let's go get a beer. I'm like, I don't need more friends. I'm here to work. I went to that guy's wedding, so we became friends, but eventually I got the beer with him. But like, I, in partnerships, I think you do blur that line a bit more of social and work, like, because you have to trust people because you're doing something together, and an NDA only does so much. So don't be afraid to make that personal relationship as well as professional. You know, keep it classy, but and then when you have that trust with someone, I think you can easily say to them, look, this isn't going to work. Let's not waste our time with it. And you prioritize the top stuff that drives business impact.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really easy to fall down the hugs and chugs path with partners.
I've never heard that. How have I never heard that?
There's a lot of different names for it. There's Barney meetings, the I love you, you love me.
Yes, I've heard that.
There's a lot of different names. I forget a bunch of them. There's some good ones, but yeah, I think it's really easy because look, if you're in partnerships, you're personable, right? You love making connections. You love making building real relationships. And hopefully, to your point, you can balance the relationship with like the professional goals of the relationship.
Yes.
But yeah, the no is just as good as a yes. I'm sure every single person that's going to be listening to this has had multiple relationships that just kind of dragged on or limped along more so, and never really actually activated or bore any fruit. So I think that's a great one too.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like we have goals as partner people. It's not just hey, go out and make friends. I think that's a different kind of job, but we have goals, and being able to kind of be respectful of your own and each other's goals is a very good lesson that I think a lot of people sometimes learn a little slowly.
And it does build that trust. It's like, hey, I can't do this with you now. I will call you if it changes. And people, I mean, that's not just a work thing, right? Like people appreciate you being respectful of their time. So
yeah, and they know that you know, hey, if this person says yes, it's a yes. If this person says no, it's a no. But they're not going to say yes when it's really a no.
Yes, because we've all worked with that person, and then you're like, oh, don't work with that guy. Nothing happened. Like you'll swirl for months and nothing gets done.
Yeah, they're just gonna blow smoke.
Yeah,
I love that. Any final thoughts or takeaways for the audience?
No, I mean, partnerships is fun. Like I think that's, if you're not having fun with it, do something else.
Yes.
that's fine. Like if it doesn't challenge you and invigorate you and energize you, that's okay. Try something else.
I love that. I'm not even going to comment on that one because I agree with that so much. Plus, it's just so hard. Like, if you're not having fun, why are you doing
this?
If
you're, why are you doing it? It's too much energy.
Too much energy. Right. Well, Marie, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. I'm sure the audience is going to love it, and appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Craig. Good to talk with you.
Thanks.